Well, welcome. During this first of 8 videos, we're going to explore the structural frame. And during this particular video, we're going to look at lesson objectives and we're going to look at key terms. In other words, we're going to provide a kind of underlying foundation of objectives and terms for the structural frame. So, having said that, let's go ahead and look over at the lesson objectives themselves. These are going to cover chapters 3 through 5 within your course book. And we're going to start out by looking at the core assumptions of the structural perspective. And we'll do this for each of the frames. We'll start out with, why that frame makes sense and what assumptions underlie the decisions they make. We'll then talk a little bit about social architecture, how you can use structure to affect functions and organizations. We'll look at the tension between differentiation and integration. How do we divide work up? How do we coordinate? And how do we get things done within a particular company? We'll talk about some of the different options for doing that, and we'll look at some imperatives that affect making choices in those particular options. From there, we'll go in to some of the dilemmas, that again, the tension in making those and the trade-offs in making those decisions. We'll look at Mintzberg's 5 structural configurations, and we'll also look at a 6th, which is the web of inclusion and how that works. And then we'll go into restructuring, all the vogue these days, and looking at how you can restructure, trade-offs associated with that, and then what risks and benefits are associated with restructuring. Finally, we'll start looking at small groups and high-performing groups and self-managing teams. So we'll get into, if you will, the nuance of structural framing and look at how you can possibly work within these particular groups. Again, small groups, high-performing teams, or self-managing teams. For the self-managing teams, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the Saturn experience. All right, let's look at a couple of the key terms associated with this. So, bureaucratic model. Notice that is not a negative noun or a negative term. It's this idea of a utopian organization. How do we maximize the norms of rationality? If we were all reasonable pursuing the interest of the organization, how would we structure it? Social architecture is that actual planning and designing of the organizational structure with roles and relationships. And then differentiation and integration, we've talked about that, this kind of how do we divide up the labor of the organization and allocate work, and then how do we integrate those different units working together and getting things done. From there, we'll move into, again, on integration, vertical and lateral integration, top down, if you will, or bottom up, and then horizontal integration, meetings and task forces and matrices and network organizations, and how they all link together. We'll talk a little bit about core technology associated with how that affects a structure and how that affects designing the organizational structure. All right, well, there we have it. In a very short time, we've covered in this video the lesson objectives that we're going to discuss as we explore chapters 3 through 5 of the book. We've talked about some of the key terms that underlie the social frame. We've provided through this video a foundation for exploring that frame. And in the next video, we're going to look at core assumptions of the structural frame and then start digging into social architecture and then this idea of integration and differentiation.